And g'day everybody. Here we are, Wade Northhausen for Billboard Battalion. We're coming to you as usual for this series anyway from Battalion headquarters in downtown Coyuga, North Central Victoria, Australia. So this is another one of the videos that we're doing, another one of the interviews with candidates and other people who are interested in the political side of it with regard to this upcoming 2025 federal election here in Australia. So the date today is Tuesday, the 29th of April, 2025. And we're live here tonight with Laury Bais, who is he's running with the Trumpet of Patriots. He's a candidate for the seat of Grey in South Australia. So anyway, we haven't had a Trumpet of Patriots candidate on so far, so it's really great to welcome Laury to the program and kick it off with a big g'day over there in South Australia, Laury.
Thank you very much.
Where the Trumpet of Patriots is only something new that's on the federal scene for this election, as far as I'm aware, and so yeah, it's now. It has some flavours of the old UAP. You've got some interesting new blood in the camp. So I think people will be very interested to hear about Trumpet of Patriots origins and where it came from and what part you play, and what's the state of play now with your new colour in it there.
All right, so Trumpet of Patriots originally started in 2021 in South Australia. Nick Duffield, myself and a number of others came together to form a right-wing conservative Christian party to really address the issues that seem to be missing from the 2022 election, and that is obviously freedom, the right to worship, the right to free speech, the right to defend, to live in a country that is traditionally a free country. Unfortunately, because of AEC interference, we weren't able to run for the 2022 election. And so we ended up obviously finally getting registered just in time for this election. Of course, at the same time, Clive unfortunately had his UAP party disconnected. He went to the High Court. The High Court said that he couldn't reconnect it. He had to wait at least one election before he could reactivate it. And he had $115 million sitting in the kitty, and the AEC was going to confiscate that money belonging to a no longer registered party, unless he gave it to another party. So Nick Duffield and a number of other of the executive went and knocked on his door and said, "Hey, how about you join with us?" And Clive said, "Yep, we'll join with you guys. We'll bring over a lot of our ARP members, combining with the Trumpet of Patriot membership we already had in place." And in exchange, he became the chairman in charge of spending of his money for the campaign. He's not a candidate. He's simply, as he says himself, he wants a better Australia, and Trumpet of the Patriots is the pathway to that.
Well, that's a pretty remarkable story. It sounds like there's a few things have had to drop into place to make that all come together and make it all happen. So well done for a start. That must have made you very happy to have that situation arise, and then Clive could come in and be a part of your outfit there, Laury.
Absolutely, and trust me, the excitement at our meeting in Adelaide when we announced it in front of 150 people, the hotel thought there was a riot and they wanted to call the police because they thought the roof was coming off. The round of applause went for about 10-15 minutes, so it seemed to me, but it was pretty exciting. And of course, the advantage is that with only 6 weeks' notice, we've not only gotten 100 candidates registered for the lower house, we've got Senate seat members running for all of the states and territories, and we're giving it a fair bloody go, mate.
That is amazing. I think Clive's known with UAP for, oh, okay, here's a good idea. Let's have a crack at this last minute sort of stuff. And last time around, I'm pretty sure that he was saying that he had a candidate in every lower house seat around Australia. So he certainly doesn't do things by halves. and it'll be good to talk to Clive myself and do an interview with him or so on. But he's a little bit elusive to catch up with. So anyway, you might flick us a line there, Laurie.
I have enough trouble getting him on the phone, let alone anybody else. The reality is that he's doing so much. He's still operating his businesses. He's still running his companies. He's still doing what he has to do and fitting this in. So I think it's quite remarkable what he's endeavouring to do.
Well, we might be able to catch up with Sue Ellen at some stage here and perhaps get her on and so on there. So that would be interesting. I was just had a chat on the phone yesterday with another one of the Trumpet of Patriots candidates. So we might even be able to get her on in Sue Ellen's absence or so on there. I've got to have a look first of all before we go into policies and what you can achieve for Australia, because we are in big trouble here. We need to have a look first, of course, there was some discussion about preference arrangements and deals and so on, where Trumpet of Patriots put up what most freedom fighters or conservatives would consider as really bad choices in terms of preferences. So can you shed any light on what's happening with that and why that may have occurred in the first place, Laurie?
So we have two aspects. The first aspect is in my seat of Grey, and in fact every seat across the country, where whoever was the incumbent was put last. So in my seat, the incumbent was a Liberal Party member, so he was put last. Now, of course, Mr. Ramsey's not running, and so Mr. Venning's running in his place, but he was put last. In second place for my seat was the One Nation. Now, we believe One Nation doesn't have a very good chance of getting enough votes, so we wanted them to give us their votes. The next one was Anita Kuss. Now, we found out after preferencing that she's part of Climate 200 because she kept that quite close to her chest. But at the same time, we don't think she's got a very good chance of winning. So therefore, we made her third. So I've got a good chance of getting her preferences. Each position on my tally sheet for the seat of Grey was placed there in order to give me the best chance of getting those votes. Having said that, the reaction within the seat of Grey, I believe, has been really positive to wanting change. The seat of Grey, of course, has been a Liberal seat for 18 years. It's considered a safe seat. So therefore, no federal money, no federal funding. We don't give a shit about Grey because it doesn't really affect the rest of Australia. The reality is Grey's a 907,000 square kilometre area. It's the third largest seat. It's bigger than Texas. I even think Victoria fits inside of the seat of Grey. And on top of that, it's 768 suburbs within the seat of Grey and 24 councils within the seat of Grey. So it's only really tiny, honest. Now, in other areas, of course, they did the same thing. They put whoever the candidate was in at the bottom. Then they worked out which seat members were most likely to not win, and they were put in either second, third, or fourth. And of course, then the Greens, the Labor, the Liberal would be in 5, 6, or 7 position, wherever it fell. However, we also got hacked. 18 of the seats got hacked in the New South Wales, Victorian, Queensland area. That's under federal investigation, and those how to vote cards have now been reprinted and redistributed because somebody hacked the system and put what would be basically Teals in second position, and that was never approved of by Trumpet of Patriots, and evidence was shown to the federal police for them to follow up with that investigation.
Okay, so because the Teals, you'd never want them in any place at all, ever.
No, that's right.
So, and hotly pursued then by the Labor and Liberals and the Greens and the Nats as well, really.
Yep.
So, all right, so that's getting tidied up. You've reprinted the how to vote cards, and they've gone out. So, at least that's something. so the security issue, yeah, I don't know how a show as big as Clive's.
Hello, I'm still here.
Yep, you're still here, here, mate. Yep, we're still good. Still there, Laurie? Okay, you've frozen there a little bit, Laurie. So maybe they're hacking you again, mate. Anyway, yeah. So hopefully you come back on and we pick up that there. You're back with us, Laurie? Okay. Some of the beauties, of course, of modern technology here is that you have a little bit of a problem or an issue at some stage. Anyway, that's just the way it goes. We do have a few bits and pieces that happen to us as well in terms of that. So the next couple of days, we'll just do a bit of an idea of what we're doing. Tomorrow, which will be Wednesday the 30th, at 12 o'clock Victorian time, we may have got something here. It looks like Laurie's dropped off. So we'll be speaking with Robin from Courage is the Cure, and we'll be doing a talk with Robin just to get a bit of an idea from her perspective as one of the commentators and one of the interviewers who run stuff across Australia in this election. She's spoken to quite a few people now, as have many of the commentators and in particular freedom movement people who are putting this stuff to air and giving as many of our candidates a run as we can. So I'm just so we'll be talking to Robin tomorrow at 12 o'clock, 12 p.m. Victorian time. That's Australian Eastern Standard Time. And we're also going to be talking to quite a number of people. And in particular, we're getting on. Well, that looks like I've got Laurie back.
Hey, guys. Sorry about that. I have no idea what happened.
Well, they obviously hacked a bit more than just the how to vote.
That's quite positive.
You're upsetting the apple cart, mate. you're really starting to upset them over there in Grey in South Australia. So, yeah. So we've got now we're starting to see with the freedom movement, quite a lot of the politicians and the small parties that I've been talking to, who differently to last election, are really starting to come together and work together and help each other. So how's that going with Trumpet of Patriots? Are you working in with other parties or other candidates and possibly putting blocks and tickets and that together? How's that going with what you're doing there, Laurie?
My personal experience, I seem to have, believe it or not, try not to have a heart attack. The Nationals member seems to be on side with us. The One Nation seems to be on side. I haven't seen hide a hair. And have I dropped out again?
Yep, we can hear you again, Laurie. Now your picture's not that flash, but I think we can still hear you, or maybe not. So clearly Laurie's upset somebody, and they're giving him a bit of a hard time. We'll chuck in. We'll put. We might say to Clive, you might have to chuck in a few bob for an extra computer or something. Maybe it might be helpful. But anyway, as I was about to say, we've got a number of other people yet to be interviewed, and some of the people that we're going to be talking to are just our average everyday farmers from across Australia. We've got a lot happening in the agricultural sector that we really need to be discussing. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of content that needs to come up yet. There's a lot that, is expected of these politicians who ever gets over the line. And we really need to be in a position to make sure that maybe we might have Laurie back.
I do apologise, guys. I have no idea what's going on with the technology. It was driving me bloody nuts. And now I've got an echo.
We'll just work it out, Laurie. No, maybe we won't. Okay.
So can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you, mate.
All right. Well, they don't need to see my ugly mug. We can just talk.
No. Well, yes. Well, I'm not going to say a word about that, actually.
Thank you.
Your ability to work in with other parties or candidates. Now, you said, Laurie, that you had a good run with the Nationals and One Nation. Is that yes, correct? Before you dropped out,
but I haven't seen the Greens. I haven't seen the Family First. We've had 3 debates in the grey area. So 6 of the candidates have turned up for the 2 of those debates, and only 1 turned up for the 3rd debate. But Greens and Family First didn't turn up for any of them. The Nationals guy was pretty good. I liked him. The One Nation was very positive. Shook my hand a few times and very interactive. And of course, One Nation's placed me, same with Anita Cussett, both placed me 2nd on their preferencing list. So I'm quite pleased with that. The reality is, though, we're not here to rely on preferencing. We're here to win the votes outright. And that's what I've been working on. I've not been working on preferencing. I've been working on vote for me, number one. Who you vote for after that is totally your choice.
Absolutely. I mean, discussions at polling booths and all that kind of thing. There are quite a lot of people who turn up to vote who really have no idea what they're doing. And even don't follow the how to vote cards because, this comes around once every 3 years for the feds. And, they got no clue. They got no idea. Many people don't even want to be there. They're only being there because they don't get a fine. So they go and just fill in whatever, get their name ticked off and head off home. So I think that, the message needs to be from my point of view and, that we get from all the candidates so far is, a lot of people talk about not voting, and a lot of candidates say absolutely should turn up and vote. What are your thoughts, Laurie, on the people who might say, the election's no good, it's fraud, it's whatever, and, we should abstain from voting? What message would you say to them, mate?
What a lot of people don't seem to understand is even if only 1,000 people out of 19 million vote, that counts as a legitimate election. Not voting means that you are literally helping Labor and Liberal win because you're not putting that vote onto any of the smaller parties and giving them a fair go to possibly win a seat and be a voice in Parliament. One of the problems you mentioned already about 3-year elections is that politicians get in, they work, they settle down for about a year, they work for about a year, and then they spend the 3rd year trying to get re-elected. When I walk into Parliament, I'm going to be working from the very first day. I don't care if I get back in 3 years' time. I'm going to make sure I leave a mark behind to say, right, the people are grey. You need water. You need power. You need better roads. You need childcare. You need aged care. You need proper support from the federal government. You need decent roads. You need rail, high-speed rail for to make these communities grow. You need what's needed for the Cedar Grey. I'm here to serve, not to tell you what to do.
And so what you said before that the Cedar Grey haven't really got much from the incumbent Liberal Party because they considered it a safe seat. Are you hearing grumblings from the residents there to say, well, we've been ignored, we need X amount to happen, it is just a safe seat? Is there any of that going on, or is everybody just sort of pretty happy with how it is at the minute?
Yeah. Oh, trust me, the farmers here in SA are not happy. These farmers in SA, especially in Grey, they literally handed over thousands of bales of hay, sent over to Victoria, to New South Wales, to Queensland for years to help the farmers over there. Yet when it was time, and voluntarily by the farmers in Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria to send it back, where was the federal government, the state government? No. You can't send anything to South Australia because you haven't cleaned it properly. You haven't made sure there's no bacterias. So when we need help here, we can't get it, not because the farmers in New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria don't want to give it, but because the freaking state government and federal government say, no, we need to keep South Australia clean of any disease. And our farmers are starving for food for their animals. Their land is dry at the moment. They've got a shit crop. They're desperate. And even then, the roads aren't being maintained properly. I had a truckie pull me up today, in fact, complaining about the road to get from Adelaide across to Sydney and how dangerous it is across the Hayes Plains and how it needs to be fixed. He was complaining to me about the fact that we have international truck drivers that come here with their MC license, and they get given an MC license in Australia, but over in India, that stands for motorcycle, not truck license. And they got no idea. They're not tested.
Yeah.
And we just lost a driver, 71 years old, on the Port Wayfield Road, lost a driver because an international driver cut across the road with his B-dub and he slammed straight into the side of it on a foggy day because he had no experience to how to drive that truck. The driver who spoke to me today said he's been called by his boss to come down and reverse a B-dub because the international driver doesn't know how to drive the truck. That's wrong.
Yeah, I must say that, a lot of the truckies that I talk to, and, I do a fair bit of driving myself, this is a real actual problem. This is a massive problem. And how dangerous this is. We've seen people pulling trucks in under bridges, getting them stuck. And as you said, not being able to back them, all sorts of things like this. So what the hell's going on with that? I get why you're talking about that, mate. It is certainly a big, massive problem. But I think too, I'll probably get a bit off the track, but, they're getting a lot of trouble getting enough truckies because of the ridiculous and brain dead scumbag fines, the huge amounts of money that people get, all the hassles and the dramas and the stress that truckies are put under just trying to operate, just trying to drive from government and so-called enforcement agencies. It is out of control. It's over the top, and they're just doing the best they can to wreck the entire country and the transport industry. But so you talk about the drought over there, and it's just starting to get pretty dry here in Vic, actually. But we were over, Billboard Battalion was over in South Australia about, 4 or 5 weeks ago. And we were up at Laura, and we did a presentation up there. And some of the farmers that were talking to us up there, they were telling us that, one bloke had been living there for 70 years, and he said he's never seen dry conditions like this. They were in desperate trouble. We knew that there were truckloads of hay sitting in Victoria ready to dispatch to, and this, a lot of this stuff was volunteer drivers and so on. They were ready to dispatch hay to South Australian drought-affected farmers, and the South Australian government were just causing them all sorts of problems in trying to deliver this hay to people who had stock that were starving. You know what I mean?
Yep, and absolutely. And that's part of the problem. People forget that when that stock dies, it takes 4, 5, 6 years to replenish that stock. And if we don't do something about it and we don't help those farmers, we're going to be starving in the future for that food.
So a big part of what we do with Billboard Battalion across Australia is that we talk to the big global picture. And we're seeing farmers right across Australia, and I realise you've got candidates all over the country, or a fair few candidates in Australia. So we fight against all the time the global big picture stuff, the fact that our state and federal governments and also councils are actually in the business of shutting down farmers. They're doing everything they can to make it as tough and hard as they can. So everything that they can possibly do, they do to make farming impossible, send us broke, and the rest of it. So, what's Trumpet of Patriots' position on that kind of stuff, Laurie? Do you fellas believe, in the facts that is happening? Where are you at on that sort of stuff?
Right. I'm going to go down a bit of a rabbit hole here. It's my belief that the mega corporations are pushing for Australian farmland to be owned by internationals under giant corporations, and that those giant corporations will then decide who works those farms, how much they pay them. They won't be under the Australian taxation system. They won't be under superannuation. They won't be under work cover. They'll be fly in, fly out. When you consider that China is the largest landowner in Australia, and that's wrong. What we've decided is we want to buy up every single scrap of land at market value from all the internationals, put it back onto the market for Australian citizens or Australian residents to buy, people who will live and work the land, not corporations. That when there is a corporation involved, it's alongside of the farmers, not taking over from the farmers. That the farmers need to be connected to their land and not simply handball it out to somebody else to do. That we need to get back to the grassroots of this country and how this country was grown, how this country was developed on the back of the farmers. We need to remember who they are, because much like we say thank you to service for our military, we need to say thank you to service for our farmers as well.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty interesting, because we've got policy and our farmers are going broke, or they're being sent broke deliberately by government policy. And over in South Australia, the SA people were blamed for the Murray-Darling Basin plan, all about the lower lakes of South Australia, the Coorong and so on. The Libs at the time said, we can't really say anything against it because the South Australian people, they're all greenies and all this other crap, and they'll lose all the senators there. And that's why the Liberals made up the bogus excuse that they would not fight against the fraudulent and criminal Murray-Darling Basin plan. So, what's your position in terms of the Murray-Darling Basin plan? Would you look at scrapping it? Would you look at making changes to it? Would you look at getting rid of the 450 up water that they want to get? Possibly have some sort of inquiry into how legitimate the fraudulent and dishonest science was that it's based on. What's your position on that sort of stuff, Laurie?
I want to start with the water rights bullshit. I watched Murray Bridge, which is a major cow milking area, and the farmers there, realizing how much more water rights was worth, started selling their water rights and emptying their paddocks. I think we've got one, maybe two cow farms that actually still produce milk in South Australia, and the rest have all closed down. They're just not here anymore. I don't even know where we're getting our milk from in South Australia, because there's certainly not enough on those two farms to give them enough milk for the rest of SA. Of course, not only that, but you also have other areas where the water rights have been sold. The farmers gone, right, rub their hands together. I've got all this money. I can retire now. Not realizing by selling those water rights, they've sold their farm, because without the water rights, they've got nothing. And that's happened right across South Australia. It's happened in Victoria as well. This is wrong. We need to recognize that the Murray River has a flow process, yes. But at the same time, with proper management and skilled use of that water, we can keep our farms going. But we've also got these massive desal plants being built up all over. South Australia's desal plant has been in caretaker mode ever since it was built. That could be being on full-blown use, and that water could be pumped up to the Murray River and dumped into it. That'll keep the flow going. But what's the point? Because they've sold all their water rights. So even if you were to dump all that reclaimed water from the desal plant into the Murray, nobody's there to pump it out because they sold it. And that's only one aspect of it. There's just so much that needs to be done to fix up the Murray, but get it out of the hands of the Greens, who've got no clue. All they're looking for is political point scoring.
Well, like I've been, as people that know Billboard Battalion and know me, we've been in this battle with the Murray-Darling Basin plan for nearly 20 years. And the Greens are a categorical disaster. They are basically, they're not the Greens anymore for whatever that was in the first instance. The Greens are simply involved in destroying our country. the lefty woke people in that wouldn't know what's actually happening. When we we actually did a tour of places in Queensland there one day, and we pulled up in a town with the Billboard Battalion bus, and anyway, these people were there, and this bloke started yelling and screaming at me, saying, get out of town, you Greens. We don't, you bloody lefties. We don't want you greeny mongrel so-and-so's here. And so she was almost a punch up on the spot right there and then. But anyway, I informed them very, very strenuously that we are definitely not the Greens. We are actually the real farmers, mate. We're the real Conservatives who are fighting for our country. So anybody who might be listening to this, possibly from anywhere around, we are definitely not left-wing. We are definitely not woke. We are definitely not the Greenies. Trust me. So,
good.
Having said that, we have other issues in the agricultural sector. I mean, obviously, you're not just about that. But, we've got in New South Wales and southern Queensland, we've got massive problems with ridiculous amounts of poisoning of mysteriously vacant fire ant nests. They're dousing the joint in poison up there. They got the cops in there threatening to arrest people if they stop these thugs and these criminals coming in with this poison. We've got all the renewable energy stuff around the countryside, all over the place. We've got, farming is collapsing in Victoria, particularly the dairy industry, as you said up there. We've got the sheep being banned in Western Australia. We've got abattoirs and stuff closing down everywhere. Just the rules and regulations on overlays on your properties. So at least I'm glad to hear you so strenuously talking about our agricultural sector, Laurie, because that's what we push 100,000%, mate. So well done to you, and thank you for that.
One of the things we want to do for the Cedar Grey is we're looking at putting in 2 nuclear power stations, one at Port Lincoln on the actual Blight, and then one up at Port Augusta, both of which will actually desalinate water as part of the process of getting the turbines to turn. You steam the water, and instead of putting that steam water back into the plant, you actually siphon that off into condensation tanks and then put that out into market gardens. There's no reason why we can't have fully operational 24 hours a day desal plants working through those power stations and get water into those areas to get agriculture and specifically hydroponics market gardens going to feed the people of the north. We don't need to rely on trucks delivering in fridges and freezers that may or may not work properly. Let's get the farmers working. I'm also working with another organization called Earthbound. And Earthbound, of course, is looking to put the biome back into the ground, back into the market gardens, into the backyard gardens. But I'm working with a billionaire to allow broad acreage to be able to utilize that technology to get the ground on the broad acreage fields reactivated with the biomes necessary to get those plants growing again, because the Monsanto GMO stuff is killing our ground. And if 5 or 6, maybe 10 more crops, and we've got dead ground, if we don't get biome back into that ground, we're effed.
Yep. So, this is sounding scarily like a whole heap of common sense that you're spitting out there, Laurie.
Oh, shit. Can't do that. I'm supposed to be a politician.
Well, I know. I don't know what's going on here. You're just going off the rails here a bit, son. Just calm the hell down, because otherwise you're going to get too many people in South Australia voting for you, and that can't.
That'll upset the Greens.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And make you wonder whether they even know what the hell biome is, or anything like that. But when their specific purpose is to take huge amounts of our valuable fresh water for growing food and run it out into the Southern Ocean, you got problems with them. So, the port.
Now, in regards, I've just noticed a couple of comments coming up on the screen there.
Yep.
Canada has 50% coal, 50% nuclear. Their electricity prices is between 9 and 14 cents. I would love to have an electricity bill that was between 9 and 14 cents with a combination of coal and a combination of nuclear. But I happen to know of technology that's being prevented from being used that can take nuclear radiation rods and decontaminate them in 5 years. Not 10,000 years, 5 years. Now, that's phenomenal technology. We put we reactivate Maralinga. We take the waste that we're required to take back that we sold overseas, put it at Maralinga, decontaminate it within 5 years, and we're bringing in $440 billion a year into South Australia. Now, you can't tell me that I can't spend $440 billion on high-speed rail, the dual highways from Adelaide to Perth, from Adelaide to Melbourne, Adelaide to Sydney, get these highways going properly, get these trucks running properly, get the freight trains running properly, and let's get the Cedar Grey, which is what I'm representing, actively working with manufacturing, with farmers and the support they need.
So you do realise, of course, that the Labor Party, the Libs, the Nationals, the Greens particularly, and even the Teals are going to hate you. You do know you're not making yourself any friends there, eh?
If my video was working, I'd be playing a violin right now. I don't really care what they think. My job is to look after the Cedar Grey, right? And the reality is the Liberals have said they've always wanted nuclear, but they only ever seem to say that when they're not in power. But as soon as they get into power, they never do anything about it. The Liberals say they want to get better water for the middle of Australia, but when they get into power, they don't do anything about it.
Well, there's huge opportunity for for national capital works that actually take our country forward. And at the minute, they're full bore, and the Labor and the Greens and the Liberals and the Nationals and the Teals are every bit as committed to destroying our electricity system. So the four major parties and the other bit of thing, whatever's hanging off the back of them in terms of the Teals, they are absolutely in the business of wrecking our country. The coal-fired power stations that they've deliberately wrecked and are in the act of blowing up, all this renewable garbage that's destroying our farmland. They're blowing up half of the mountain ranges to put it on. This thing is a catastrophe. In my opinion, it cannot possibly deliver what they're saying it is. We are going to see power blackouts and shortages. What's your thoughts, Laurie, on the renewable as it is now, the sector that they're building now?
I have a 32 kilowatt system on my roof. I have 24 kilowatts of batteries, and yet I still get an electricity bill. I discovered after doing a bit of research that the batteries are 80% tax. If you took that 80% tax off the batteries, the average Joe Blow could afford the batteries to run off their solar systems and actually not have to be reliant on the grid. On top of that, when the installers put their solar panels on the roofs, they don't turn the hot water system back to day use. They still keep the hot water system at night use, which drains the batteries. And yet these simple little things don't do these things that could actually make people and save people power. Then on top of that, you've got these great big, ginormous Chinese manufactured wind turbines that when they only last 10 to 15 years, maybe 20 years, they then get buried in the ground. There's no recycling process for them. They're killing our native birds. Then the sound harmonics on these blades make people sick when they live too close to the bloody things, right? Then on top of that, you've got security driving around to make sure that nobody's vandalizing the bloody things. I'm not sure how they're going to vandalize them considering how strong they're built. And yet they can't even build some decent power lines so they don't fall over in September because they're Chinese steel, they're not Australian steel. What the blazes is going on? I remember that September night. It was a nightmare. The reality is we are reliant on overseas product when we could be bloody making it here in Whyalla. We could be making it Australian quality steel. We're supposedly be going to the goal of 2030 that we're going to be neutral on carbon. Guess what? You calculate the trees, you calculate the grass, you calculate the plankton off the coast of Australia, and we're about 4,000 points in front. But they don't want to calculate that. They don't want to calculate what they perceive as human-made.
Well, I think that one of the most important things that we need to understand in the first instance, right, is that any kind of calculations or strategy or technology to get us to net zero needs to be scrapped, because the entire net zero, the whole climate change thing,
bullshit,
is an absolute fraud.
It's all bullshit.
Absolutely. So, and as people in agriculture know, if you don't have carbon,
Your plants don't grow. Your plants don't grow.
Yep.
Just brain dead, isn't it?
So now all these plans that you've got, and I don't know if old Clive's on board or what the go is. It's a bit hard to get to talk to him, actually, to tell you the truth. But I put it to you that there's certain things happening now at the global level, of which the Australian government, the state government, and the councils in Australia are all involved in, that are deliberately put in place to destroy all this stuff. Whatever you're talking about, plus more. Stop you from doing any of that. Stop any of us from doing that, and wipe out what we've got left. So
I agree.
So we've got one thing in particular, which I think is massive, is the international. Well, they didn't actually get the international pandemic agreement across the line.
Good.
So now what we've got is the IHR, which is the International Health Regulations, and they're looking at amendments to that. But that's supposed to take place in July 19th of this year. So for my knowledge on that and everything I know about it, which is considerable, that's going to be used as the lever to give the WHO, the UN, and the WEF the power to shut down everything you're talking about, plus put our country out of business, wipe out farmers, bring in forced injections, the whole lot, every bit of crap that they're talking about, but 1,000 times worse. So what's your thoughts? And I'd be interested to know what old Clive's thinking about this as well, given that he operates in those circles. So I'd be interested to hear your opinion on that, Laurie.
On the opening night a few weeks ago, I actually was in Queensland for the opening night. I was at the speech that Clive gave. He made it clear, no more WHO. World Health Organization, we're out. Paris Agreement, we're out. We're going to be looking after Australia for Australians. We're not going to give a rat's ass about the UN agreements and the supposed treaties. We're going to look after Australia first. We're going to do agreements that are beneficial to Australia first. The reality is we have the largest deposit of pretty much everything in the world. We should be ranked in the top 5, and yet we're nowhere near it. I look at what Norway's doing. They're brilliant. They've got the 4th largest oil refineries going for oil supply in the world, and yet that's only 5% of their GDP. We need to be taking a page out of their book. Let's get the oil pumping. Let's manufacture it ourselves for our diesel and our petrol and our other needs. Let's export the finished product. Let's give the appropriate taxes to that so that Australia can be tax-free on wages, on payroll, on land tax. Let's get everything back to where it should be. The reality is, people say, oh, no, you Trumpet of Patriots, you're not going to get enough seats. Here's a reality check for you guys. If we get 10 seats, we're a block on the backbench. Nothing Labor and Liberal can do will ever work as two independent opposition and party. They will only ever be able to get legislation through if they come to us. The only way they'll be able to get legislation through otherwise is if Labor and Liberal become one party. And that'll really mean that the duopoly is, in fact, one party. Like we've all been saying that for a while. If we get 30 seats combined with the other independents, we don't just become a bloc. We become the opposition. If we get 76 seats, we take power in the lower house. The only way that's going to happen is if people say enough to the Labor Liberal duopoly, give the Freedom Parties a fair go, and we actually make some changes. In 1901, when we became a country, there were no parties. There were senators and lower house representatives who worked together for the good of their areas and for the good of their states. It was only, 1907 that the first party came in, and then 1912 when the second party came in. And we've been stuck with them ever since. Let's go back to the Constitution. Let's go back to that red book, not the bullshit criminal green one.
Yeah, well, and we've sort of covered a fair bit of that stuff in what we've doing in this election. And I talked to a lot of people about constitutional stuff, illegal elections, about common law and so on. So right now, where we're at right now, we need people to, and although the system at the minute mightn't be whatever, but we need people to turn out and actually, take on the other side, because that's the system they're working with at the minute, even though however corrupt it is and so on. So, we hope to see as many people filling in the ballots. And, they all talk about if we don't vote, that's going to frighten the hell out of them.
No, it's not
going to frighten the hell out of anybody.
It gives them exactly what they want.
What's going to happen is, we need to get as many votes for the freedom parties as possible, and start getting rid of them and get more freedom politicians in, because that's what's going to frighten the hell out of them.
One of the things that we've said in the party is the Trumpet of Patriots party has said for every new regulation, we need to get rid of 10 old ones. For every new policy, we need to get rid of old ones. I'll give you a stupid example. Salisbury Council, they still have on their books that if you are driving a motor vehicle, you need to notify the mayor if you're planning on driving through the town centre of Salisbury. That law was passed in 1905. Now, I don't think the mayor's going to take my phone call if I want to drive through the town, but the law's still there. Let's get rid of that piece of bullshit and all the other pieces of bullshit that are out there. Australia for Australians.
Well, I know that probably 1980 or something like that, there were still some shires that had it on their books that you had to have a copper and a wash house outside. So that's how stupid it is. We're seeing that up in Queensland now. We've got a bloke running up there who we've interviewed just recently. Their whole town was, or virtually all their town was handed over to some sort of group of Aboriginal families or something of that nature. What's your take on, the things like The Voice and all that sort of stuff there, where we're seeing massive big problems in terms of people being able to own their own land, or being able to work on their own land, or have to get all these endless permits and rorts and scams and extortion just to do anything on their own place? Where do you stand on that, Laurie?
We need to go back to our original constitution, because our original constitution said we owned the land that we purchased, and what we built on it was part of that land. Now, under this green constitution, they've taken away that ownership. I own the buildings on the land, but I don't own the land anymore. We've removed the word Commonwealth from our currency. We've removed the word of ownership, the Latin words of ownership on our land titles. In fact, we don't even have paper land titles anymore with the beautiful stamp and the endorsement. Now we've got some sort of shortened Latin word that says we have the lease of the land, and that's a digital copy. And what happens when the digital copies disappear? This is bullshit. We need to be able to stand strong and say, right, Australian land is owned by Australian citizens and Australian residents. Foreign ownership not allowed. We can't own land in China. We can't own land in India. We can't own land anywhere other than the country we live in. Although I did have some woman correct me and say, oh, no, we can buy land in England. Well, good for you. You go back to England and go buy the land over there, because in Australia, we sell it to all the frigging foreign countries, and we shouldn't be doing that. We need to be restored here. We need to own the land here. We need to be able to have sovereignty on that land. We need to be able to say, right, this is my land. You don't have a right to come onto my land unless I've either A, broken the law, you're trying to arrest me because I've broken that law, or because you're here to help because somebody's injured on my land. But otherwise, you stay off my land until you got permission to come on my land. We need that sovereignty. We own it. We're in charge of it. We look after it. But we don't have that anymore. Neither do the farmers. And that's just bullshit. Well,
like I said there before, a lot of our cockies reckon that they own their place. They reckon that been left it to them, you know, from generations, or they've worked hard and they've paid the place off and what have you. But, you know, this is one of the big things that I talk about, is that people who own their farm, you're not going to for much longer. If this keeps going, and once again, the international plan that I'm talking about, you won't own your farm, you won't own your industrial land, you won't own your house. This is literally where this is going. So let's have a bit of a look at the scam and the fraud that was COVID, and let's have a look at the injections and what they're gearing up to do again, Laurie. And I might bring you back to the international health regulations, as I said, that's coming in July. July, if we don't do something about this, you know, what's your opinion on the COVID scam, the poisonous injections, and what they're planning to do next?
We have literally lost hundreds, if not thousands, of citizens to the COVID vaccine. Not because it kills us outright, but because it supposedly activates a pre-existing condition like myositis. Crock of shit. The friggin' vaccine caused it. The reality is we need to have a royal commission into all the aspects, not just for South Australia, but for the entire country. And the stuff that happened in Victoria was draconian, right? All of this needs to be investigated, and the people who made those decisions need to be charged. Now, the EU court has just declared any doctor or pharmacist who injected somebody that caused an injury is now liable for that injury. That's the EU court. They've declared it. That's it. The reality is we've got injured people. We've got hurt people. We've got sick people that have been hurt by these vaccines. In South Australia, we still have nurses that can't get their friggin' jobs back, because in South Australia, if you're not fully vaccinated, you can't work in a hospital. There's thousands of nurses that could be helping aged care, could be helping people across the board, and they can't get their jobs back because they're not vaccinated. Rubbish. If women can have their body and their choice, and they can make their decisions, right, to look after their body when it comes to babies, why can't we look after our bodies when it comes to injections? If 90% of the population is vaccinated, who cares about the 10% that's not? Because the 10% that aren't going to make the vaccinated sick. Oh, hang on a sec. That's right. You can still get sick with the vaccine because it only eased the conditions. What a crock of shit.
Yeah, well, like the things that we saw in Victoria were just abhorrent. And not for that matter, you know, notwithstanding the rest of the country either. So, you know, we might talk about parliamentary commissions or royal commissions. What we need is as much pressure as possible to be put on by our politicians and backed up by the Australian people to force the so-called police, let's look at the homicide squad, to actually investigate mass murder. You know, this is, and one of the reasons they don't is because every police commissioner in the job in Australia, whether they're federal cops, whether it's state cops, doesn't matter, they are all on the take, and they are all trying to cover up mass murder. They're covering up crimes, they're covering up killings. And I just, I think back to 1996, what happened in Australia after the Port Arthur massacre, the massive call for retribution, the whole thing that went down in 1996 after Port Arthur, you know, and now I don't know what the figures would be for the people who have been murdered by the government on behalf of the World Health Organization and so on, in conjunction with the doctors and nurses who injected people and the chemists. So the murder rate in Australia could be 10 million or 20 million. They don't know it yet, but this is coming for them. So, you know, what should happen? Do you think we should be putting maximum pressure? Stuff this Royal Commission crap. Let's go straight to arrests, charges, and people being charged with mass murder, with genocide and crimes against humanity.
I would love to see that, but we have some rule of law in this country where we need to have adequate evidence to be able to convict them. We can arrest people based on emotion, but we need the evidence to go, right, here you are, you're in the docks, here's the slam dunk evidence, you need to now face charges for it. And right now there are cases happening, but they're all being settled out of court so they can prevent any case being case law. Once the first case law happens, the boom gates are going to open for hundreds and thousands of people to come forward and say, hey, I've got an injury or I lost a loved one. Until that first case law happens, right now they're doing every single case they can, settle out of court, here's compensation, be quiet, don't tell anybody, sign this document, here's $1 million, go away. The reality is we need to fight for this, but we also need to do it within the rule of law. Now, I'm not backing down from having a Royal Commission. I'm not backing down from a full investigation, but at the same time, we've got to do it properly.
100% behind, yes. But you cannot go into court and have a monetary settlement for murder. That's not on the table. That's not an option. And we've got so many cops who are themselves, if they wanted to keep their jobs or whatever, they've had to go and get these things that they're a ticking time bomb now. They're walking around. This stuff's going to kill a heap of them, and it probably already has. We've probably already seen a heap of cops that are injured beyond repair. Many of them will be in the ground in a coffin right now. They're dead. And, I spoke to this years ago in the big protest rallies and stuff that I spoke at in Melbourne. So, we're literally seeing that chief commissioners of police are actually cop killers. So, I think that we need to say that's where we're at. The evidence is overwhelming. The motive exists. The MO exists. So, we need to really put the pressure and, if you have a platform, look, old Clive's got a platform, the rest of them have got a platform, we need to start really pushing this hard.
We've already said within Trumpet of Patriots, and Clive has said this, he wants a Royal Commission into the vaccines. He wants to make sure that these vaccine jabs don't happen again. He wants to make sure that the lockdowns don't happen again. We as a party fully support that. We want to make sure that it's your body, it's your choice. If you get sick because you didn't have a vaccine, you get sick. You live with it. You deal with it. But to be poisoned, have our DNA changed. Germany right now, they're doing studies where the youth are no longer producing semen, they're producing spike protein. So they can't have kids. Italy's birth rate's below 1%. The entire towns are being gutted because there's just nobody to maintain those towns. And the average age in Italy, I think, is 29, where it should be 21. They've got nobody to replace their jobs. They've got nobody to replace the population because they're all too friggin' old. Right? And that's because of the jab. A big portion of that's the jab.
Yep.
Italy was one of the first countries to be fully jabbed, and now they're suffering. The sterilization rate, right? I believe that 4 out of 5 women in Australia have been sterilized that got vaccinated. We're not going to see that evidence until it starts becoming obvious and people are suddenly going, where's our birth rate? Oh, no, we've got birth rate from the illegal immigrants. And they're being counted. But they didn't get vaccinated. We don't know if they got vaccinated on the way here.
Yep. So, look, it's been a very, very interesting discussion here, Laurie. And, the discussions that we had before we did this were very interesting as well, to tell you the truth. You're who you are and what you're about is, I think it makes a very interesting story. So we've got to a touch over, an hour or so now, which is
could go all night. I could go all night.
Yeah, I have a bit of a can-do attitude on that myself, actually. So, look, I think we need to talk again, mate. It'd be good to get a bit of a yarn going here because part of what I believe is that we've got to lead from the front. We've got so much that I've been involved with the freedom movement over many, many years. we've just got to stand up the front and go for it now. This is we're at the 59th minute of the 11th hour, so it's do or die now. The date of the 19th of July is very, very real, and it's very coming for us. And I think that our entire country will change on that day if we don't do something about it. And I know there's also other things happening between now and then with regard to all these health regulations and votes and amendments and so on. So all I can say, mate, is best of luck. The things that you're saying are what everybody wants to hear, or normal people anyway. And at the end of the day, we hope that you do really, really well. We love to see the freedom parties who are working together. And we've been trying to catch up with Sue Ellen. I'm not sure where she's disappeared to. But anyway, if she's about, be interesting to chat to her. And similarly, be even more interested to have a bit of a yarn to old Clive and say, well, we'll need to straighten a few things out, old son, and go from there. So once again, mate, anything that you'd like to close on there, Laurie? Because I think it's been a great night, mate, and I really appreciate so much you giving us our time, giving us your time. Sorry, and just shooting straight, because that's what we need to do.
In Balaclava, we had a lot of complaints from the locals over a 20-year period that we had too many empty shops. Instead of joining in on the complaints, I bought 2 of the buildings that were empty and I put 6 shops in them. That's just a small example of what I'm willing to do for the people I represent. I was part of this town. I made it my home. I did something about the problem instead of just talking about the problem. I have the same go-to attitude when it comes to the seat of Grey. It's a seat that's bigger than Texas, but it's also a seat that could be better than bloody Texas. So let's make the seat of Grey just one fantastic example of what can be done in this country. And not just here, but wherever possible. Freedom fighters like myself are fighting for this country. Help them get elected, because the reality is, if we can get a decent crossbench, the end result is we can control Parliament, because without our vote, they can't go ahead. And if Labor and Liberal are stupid enough to stand together, their power hold breaks, because it means that there is only one party, and we've been lied to for the last 100 years. And then the Australian people across the board can finally make a decision. Enough for Labor and Liberal. Let's get parties that stand for Australia and not stand for socialism, not stand for one world government, one world currency, one world church, and stand for the people that live in this country. Absolutely, mate. Well said. We wish you the best of luck. And as I say to a lot of the people we talk to, we'd love to talk to you when you're in the winner's circle. So well done, and thanks very much for all your efforts and your time and everything you're doing, Laurie. Anyway, we'll call it quits at that, mate, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you again very soon. So thanks, Laurie. Thank you, and thank you for everybody that listened in. Absolutely. All right, thanks, mate. Catch you later.